So, what does it take to leave the security of a full-time career and build something entirely your own? Jason Rhule knows because he's done it. As founder and president of multi-million-dollar tech firm Evolution Data, Jason leads a company specializing in IoT, AI, and environmental data solutions, one of the fastest growing spaces in tech. But his journey didn't start with a technical degree. It started with vision, resilience, and authenticity. After years of balancing a corporate career with a growing side business, Jason made the leap, backed by a strong family foundation and a deep belief in the mission. His story is a blueprint for anyone ready to build boldly and lead with purpose. This is The Other Canada. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Other Canada podcast. It's an honor to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. The audience is in for a big treat today because, in our previous conversation, you shared a little bit about how you went from having a side hustle
Yes.
to owning a multi-million-dollar tech firm.
Yes.
Right? And I know that's an aspiration for many entrepreneurs out there.
For sure.
So before we dive in and Jason gives us the blueprint, the code, all the information we need.
The secret sauce, as they say.
The secret sauce, right? Yeah. What does the audience need to know about Jason Rhule in terms of who you are as a man and, your legacy and your history? What do they need to know?
I'd say I'm interesting to talk to. I'm always up for a conversation. I like to always engage with people on a very human level to try to understand where they're at and really just try to have the conversation to really give a win-win benefit from what we're talking about.
Beautiful.
I tend to really be engaged when it comes to one-on-one conversations or, listening in a session or participating in a session or even giving a session. Mm-hmm. So I think from the audience to know me a little bit better, it's good to know that, Jason's always available for a conversation. People think I talk a little too much sometimes, so I kind of get into the weeds a little bit. But, when you're in tech and when you're trying to grow a business and you're trying to communicate and be part of the community, you really got to be open. You got to say what you're thinking, and you always got to really be open for a conversation. So, if anybody's to kind of engage with me, they'll kind of say, hey, this guy's got a lot to say, but his opinions are pretty well grounded, and he has a good way of making us feel like our opinions are heard. So I guess that's probably the thing you would think about.
I love that. It's basically what you're open. You're approachable, which is great. And I'm sure
definitely.
that's lended to, a strong company culture. Because I think a lot of times, especially in larger firms, it can be easy for the founder or the president to have a little bit of a separation from the team.
Definitely. Well, we're not a large firm. Like we're relatively small and mighty, but we do have a very direct line for dialogue, conversation. There's really not a lot of negativity that goes on in the business. So we have a very good line of communication, and we work very collaboratively together. And, the dialogues that we have and the conversations and the customers we approach, I think there's always a good synergy that we have internally. So
Absolutely.
I think we're not void of any issues, mind you, but we try to mitigate and handle them quite quickly.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Well, in tech, it's really easy as well. I think there's a common misconception, right, within tech that you need to be technical to launch a successful tech firm. So maybe we can even start there, dive right into the deep end.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's share a little bit about your history. You're a non-technical founder. How did you find yourself in this space?
Well, I guess the journey starts back to, high school, where my focus at that time was I was playing sports, basketball, football, and the whole objective was let's get a scholarship. Let's go to the States. Let's go to the U.S. because that's where all the things happen. You're watching basketball come up. Big fan of the 90s. Shout out to Michael Jordan and the teams. So I'm a big kid in the 90s. This when the formidable years when you're just trying to get to that next level. Basketball was kind of the venue. Did some track and field as well. Got to some higher levels than that as well, national, etc. And the focus was really just kind of to keep on that path. And I always had a like for business, right? Whether it be, I think one of the classes we had was a entrepreneur class, which was kind of a weird class to have back. Well, I thought back in those days where there's like business, math, English, and that was kind of your, and history was the journey. But they had an entrepreneur course, and it was my favorite course by far, because it really, part of the course material is that you had to start a business, like a mock business, where I think what we did is a t-shirt business. That's what we did. So we got all the ideas together, the designs and all that stuff, and we made t-shirts, basketball themed, of course. And we just really went down that path of creating a business, doing a little bit of marketing of whatever marketing was back then. I think it was advertising in a newspaper or something like that. Don't want to date myself. But we went down that path, and I found I had a very strong aptitude for it, and I really liked that whole aspect of it. And, throughout high school, it was like mostly focused on sports and business. That was kind of my two paths. And I ended up not going to university initially, and taking a little bit of time to go work full time and, generate some income and all that stuff. And then after that, I made that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to go to I wouldn't say it was a technical school. So it's shout out to DeVry Institute. I don't know if anybody ever gone there or if anybody's heard of it.
Yeah, we know DeVry.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to DeVry after high school, and their focus obviously was tech, right? It was, sound engineering. It was computer technology, all those things. And I really stayed on the business side. So they did have a business stream. And where the business stream kind of converged with technology was they allowed or they promoted, I guess they called it business operations and technology. So they had a little bit of lean of technology. So you did some programming and some Visual Basics and some C++ and some of that more baseline stuff. There's even an A+ certification or hardware related aspect. And they were okay. I was okay to be able to learn those. But then there was the business aspect. And that's where I really shined and focused on is how do I now marry the business with the technology? So then that's kind of where the journey started. Is like, how do I utilize my love for technology and all these cool technology things and then try to move it into making a business out of it?
So often when it comes to tech, people can feel a little bit confused. And I want to do a little bit of context setting so that they're clear about what type of technology you specialize in and how you got into this space. So maybe you can share a little bit about what evolution data focuses in on in very simple terms.
Okay. Sometimes I guess we're in the elevator pitch area.
Yes.
So what does evolution data do? So evolution data provides connectivity to customers to allow them to connect their devices to the internet. So the main theme is connecting devices to the internet. By doing that, what we're able to do is allow customers to conduct their business, and we're allowing them to be able to connect their devices to provide outcomes for whatever they happen to need. So whether it's for irrigation controllers, whether it's for solar panels, whether it's for a very simple use case of a construction trailer, of getting internet to their team. So essentially, evolution data is connecting devices to the connected world. That's kind of one of our taglines because everything is connected nowadays. So we're providing that highway for the data to be able to be connected to your device. So that's what we do.
That's amazing. That is very clear. And thank you for that. Because one of the things that we often find is that when we're talking to very technical people, we can get into the deep details and get a little bit lost.
A lot of technology to be talked about for sure.
Right? And so one of the things that I found beautiful in our pre-conversation, the combo we had before, was that you don't actually come from a technical background, but you have deep information and skill set within the technical space.
Correct.
Maybe you can share a little bit about what it's like being a tech founder who is at the heart non-technical in terms of your roots.
Yeah, no, definitely not an engineer by trade. Didn't come from a background of having a four-year degree within that tech space. So no application programming, no software engineering, none of that in my background. Mostly business focused. And I think what really drew me in the tech space is we occupy a space in tech where we are providing a layer of the solution. So right now, when you look at a tech stack where you have your application, you have all the technology underneath it, and then you have some of your server and foundational stuff. The one thing that exists within that stack of technology is the connectivity. How does that stuff that you're collecting, that you're analyzing, that you're looking at get to the internet so it can get to the cloud, so it can get to your device in some cases, or so it can get to, a place where a decision is made. So by occupying a small layer within the tech stack, we've been pretty successful where we've tried to not be everything to everyone, but just try to have a very small niche of what we offer to connect things to the internet. So it's about, I'd say, niching down a bit and being specialized in what you offer. We've since grown a little bit where we're having more full end-to-end solutions, but our history is very much in providing that connectivity layer.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then what about for you? How did you make the leap from understanding and selling some of these solutions to then building out a full tech firm that specializes in this space? And what are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome as a non-technical founder?
I think with not being technical, it's obviously being curious, asking questions, sometimes too many questions of the technology provider that you're working with or the customer requirements that you're gathering. And being curious and asking a lot of questions, you get a ton more information than you over anticipated. So you can find out details about the solution set. You can find details about, maybe some issues that they've had in the past that you're trying to help them overcome. So just being curious and asking the right questions, not being super technical, gets you a very long way.
Yes.
And then the other thing too is finding people around you or having people in a circle that you can go to and ask those questions. And, sometimes as a, not overly technical person, what you find is that you feel a little bit uneasy about asking questions to technical folks or you feel unintelligent for asking what they would almost think as obvious questions.
Yeah.
You just can't have that risk and that fear. You just have to be able to push through and say, you know what, I don't know this, so I need your help to understand it. But what I've done, though, that I think has really helped me is I've actually taken the initiative to learn, to say, you know what, I don't really know how this technology works end to end. I don't really need to know, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to spend a little time. And all the tools that are available now with AI and all the online resources, it's very easy to find out information. There's a story where I wanted to find out specifically how some like server cloud stuff connected. Well, it's not stuff, but some server backend stuff.
Yes.
And the best way I found to find that was I had a friend who was experiencing that space, who'd worked in database and worked in, call centers or data centers, et cetera. So I reached out to him and just said, you know what, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to record it. And when I'm done recording, I'm going to probably either listen to it back to a bunch of times or I'm going to throw it in the chatbot and actually see if there's any pieces there that I can add to it.
Such a good technique.
Yeah. So, and there are some, I actually was blown away. I came across a podcasting tool. I don't know if you've seen, have you heard of Notebook LM?
No.
Okay. So for our viewers, look that up. It is incredible. So what you can do with it is you can reference 5 or 6 sources, whether they be websites, PDFs, images even. And then what it does is it creates a two-way conversation between 2 random avatar people.
Okay.
Who knows who they are, about the topic. It's incredible.
And then it kind of makes it
it makes it a podcast.
Oh, wow.
Just like we're having a conversation right now. And there's it's not really host led. It's kind of like a two-way dialogue, but a very specific set of topics or sources that you gave it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, so it's been a great resource. I've used it a bunch of times because, like a lot of people, podcast is a great way to learn and a great way to ingest information. So
absolutely. No, that's great. So it sounds like you've been very curious.
Yes.
And you've been also comfortable in not knowing,
yes,
but clear on the end vision, which is that you do need to find the right solution
100%.
and be able to provide, quality for your clients.
You got it.
That's beautiful. And so you've always kind of had this aptitude for entrepreneurship. Was it something that was prevalent within your family? Because I know now being a tech founder is something that people aspire to be.
For sure.
Right? And it was not even a career that was necessarily promoted in the same way at that time. So what was it like in terms of, you saying to your family, hey, I want to launch a business? Or was that something that, you went down the corporate road and that fire started to reignite again?
Yeah. Well, my parents were both my dad was a blue collar and my mom worked in an office. Okay. So both of them did not have any entrepreneurial kind of aspirations. My dad did have a side hustle, which I'm sure we'll get into, because he worked for the food terminal, the Ontario food terminal. And what he did is after work and on weekends, he would buy produce for local businesses or for friends and family. Never really wanted to get into a larger scale operation, but I kind of saw some of the things, his little receipt book and how I'd write down the different customers and I'd look through it and kind of see, what type of transactions he was doing, not from a financial perspective, but just to understand what was going on. Yeah. And he seemed to enjoy it. And it was something that he would do after work. Mm-hmm. He never really made the transition, the jump. He was more, he's born and raised in Jamaica and, he came to Canada through England, following my grandfather who came here initially to set up kind of the family unit, the rules in Ontario and Canada. And so he didn't really get into that business aspect of it or start his own business. Just even looking through the family tree, the only uncle that I have that's really a business owner, he got into that later in life as well. Mm-hmm. Wasn't something he started off, worked some jobs, and then he kind of progressed to that. But from a family perspective, no, there wasn't really that inspiration to go into my own business. But I just knew deep inside that that's something that I wanted to do.
What's kind of interesting is it may have even been a seed for them, but it sounds like the sacrifice that they made was to come here, to kind of settle in this space. Yeah. I love the way that you put it. You said the first generation of Rhules kind of being in Canada, right?
Yeah.
And then
uncles
now,
and grandfather, et cetera. Yeah,
beautiful. And then now, you're able to take that seed of just seeing them starting something and build it into like a flourishing business, which is powerful.
No, that's a good connection because I think making that risk, it was either Toronto or Cleveland, Ohio. That's what my grandfather told me. So if that decision wasn't made, I probably wouldn't be here, right? Or I'd be somewhere else. But when my grandfather came here and sort of established the family, and my uncles came over because they were in England, and then my dad came from Jamaica, and kind of all that group came together. The foundation of that was what I think gave me the courage to go out and say, you know what, I want to start something on my own, or I want to learn more about this thing. So
yes,
that's what I did.
So let's go from, having that seed in high school where you're like, hey, I think this is something that I want to pursue. Yeah. And then you did end up going into the corporate space. You worked at TELUS for quite some time.
Yes.
So tell us about that transition to TELUS, and then how did that launch into, your own firm?
Yeah. So there was a short stop before TELUS when I graduated DeVry. I worked in an IT department within a large, heavy equipment supplier. So what I would do there is I was the guy in charge of buying all the tech stuff. So that's kind of where the seed happened, where I was like, oh, this is cool. Laptops, servers, Blackberries, for people who remember what those are. Yeah. It was kind of early days for that technology, mobile technology, et cetera. So what ended up happening there is I was learning about all this stuff. And a lot of times, because it was a purchasing related role, you'd have people come to you with open requirements. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they need for ABC tasks. So what you would often do is just sit there and listen, and they would say, okay, well, I need something that does this, this, and this. I need something that's, around this price point. I need something that, has this sort of service warranty, et cetera. So you'd listen to these requirements, and then you'd go away and speak to your suppliers and say, okay, here's what my customer needs. Yeah. So for me, the purchasing role always became like a sales role almost. So I was taking requirements from my customer and then providing them to my supplier to help them satisfy the requirement, right? So it was a very natural thing for me. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I guess after a while of just in that role, I was like, you know what? Everyone always says you should be in sales. You've probably heard that, or a lot of people say that, but you should be in sales. You're always selling. I was like, damn, yeah, maybe I should be in sales. It seems like something that would come natural to me. So I think around after a couple of years there, a friend of mine said, hey, you should be in sales, right? And then he encouraged me to apply at TELUS in their small to medium business division. And it was one of those interactions where, you go in, you meet the boss or whatever. And he basically said on the spot, it's like, when can you start?
Love it.
And I was like, well, I'm not really, I wasn't really ready.
Yeah.
And I think the subtext or the kind of underlying factor there of why it was an awkward kind of time or position is when I had left the other job, I had 2 young kids at the time, right? And my wife was like, what are you going to do? You're going to go get another purchasing job? Like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
Because she was, I guess, at home with the second one.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, income, like what's going on? You need to start figuring it out. And then I got into the sales job at a very low base salary, because that's traditionally how back then and probably now they start you in sales is they're like, okay, well, we're going to give you a small base salary, but then you have unlimited income earning potential. If you hustle, you'll make money.
Yep.
If you work harder, you'll make money. And that appealed to me. I was like, oh, so wait a second. So if I do a little bit more or do a lot more, I make more money. It's like, sounds like something I'm into. So accepted the job, of course, and really just dove in full force because it was, I guess, what I was looking for, a blend of technology, because we're talking smartphones, we're talking, I don't think we did pagers, but like smartphones and flip phones and all that stuff at the time, and customer requirements. So talk to customers, find out what they want, find out how they can best be serviced by what we offer, and then match. So for me, that was great. And I spent probably 10 plus years there just kind of going through that motion of growing a career, went from small business sales to enterprise sales. And then I think there's a point where I kind of hit a wall a little bit. And I guess it happens to a lot of salespeople where you get to the point where it's like, I've sold all the stuff that we offer.
Yeah.
It's incrementally better. What else is there? And then I ended up taking on a role in a consulting aspect my first time. Didn't really love it because it's that whole analogy of you're what does it go again? You are using your watch to tell the time, right? Or using their watch to tell the time, or whatever that analogy is. Wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have this ambition to move into full-time entrepreneurship, but they're focused in on their job. They're maybe even stuck in their job, and they're trying to figure out how to move from side hustle to full-time entrepreneur. And you were successful at doing that, and now you have evolution data. What advice would you give to somebody who currently is working on their side hustle and they want to make it their full-time job?
Well, I guess the obvious thing is to be to have courage and be intentional on what you want to do. Like, I guess those are obvious things, because when you have a 9 to 5 and you want to work a 5 to 9, what you need to do is you have to have that balance of time and effort, but then you also have to have a desire to make more for yourself and for your family. I don't want to say it sounds cliche, because sometimes you have to put yourself out there to try to get to that level of having to be unextinguishable, I call it, because when you have your own business, then you generally can't fire yourself, right? Founders have a hard time getting fired, right? So they're able to speak up and speak more loudly about whether it be issues, whether it be, things in their business, or just trying new things.
Yeah.
But to answer your question about the transition path and how that worked is, when working full time, what I would generally try to do is I try to carve out additional time for other things. Right.
Okay.
So other work projects, or having things on the side that would allow me to both learn and also start to transition some activity with customers, like to start to get some transactions. And what you find is if you start small and you're starting to get little wins and you're starting to close little deals, the business I was lucky enough to start was a monthly reoccurring revenue business.
Okay.
So almost like a SaaS business where there's a subscription involved, where customers are going to pay you a small amount of money every month.
Yes.
The story behind it is my co-founder, because I didn't start this on my own. I'm doing most of it now on my own, but we had a very simple ambition because we both work full-time and we were both trying to do the side hustle thing. We just wanted enough money to buy ourselves some Porsches.
Love that.
It was a very simple endeavor, very, I wouldn't say it was too noble of a quest, but, just whatever. Like, that's what we decided to do because we had this other little business where it was making a little bit of money. And we're like, if we could get about $1,500, $2,000 a month, we could go lease whatever we want, right? So it was kind of like a childish endeavor initially where we're like, let's create this business to gain a little bit of monthly reoccurring revenue. And I think when you look at side hustles and making them substantial or making them, take over from your full-time hustle, it's very difficult to do deep work and do work that requires a lot of time and being present in a space. So you can't really, if you're a consulting person or a consultant, you can't start a side consulting business because you have both of the outputs of those are time. And you only have a certain amount of time. You can't do consulting in the day and then want to see customers at night because they're on the reverse schedule, right? They're doing their thing in the day and at night they want to sleep or be with their family. So when it comes to side hustles, there's definitely certain businesses, online businesses are great, where you don't need to necessarily be in front of a brick and mortar place. Being an investor is also potentially a side hustle thing that people who have high earning jobs in the daytime and they want to be involved in something in the evening, being an investor in a business or in a small business or in a food place is a good place to be a side hustle kind of focus. So, for me, transitioning into a side hustle business was I was very lucky in the sense that the business we transitioned into had a monthly reoccurring revenue base.
Yes.
And then we got to the point where the base from the full-time and the base from the reoccurring revenue started to equal.
Ooh,
and then
okay.
one started to become greater than the other. So then you eliminate this one and you say, you know what, I'm going to focus all my energy on this. And then this one goes even higher. So it was picking the right business for your side hustle is one of the pieces of advice I'll give as well. Because there's just certain businesses that just don't work. And the risk of that is if you get a business that doesn't work as a side hustle, you have to jump 2 feet in, which I'm a big proponent of as well. Like you sometimes have to take risks in life, or not sometimes, you always have to take risks in life in order to get to a point sometimes. And creating your own business and starting your own business, I would fully recommend it to anybody because it's a different vibe.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
And so let's talk about that moment where the monthly recurring revenue matched up to your actual role, like your role at TELUS.
Yep.
What needed to be true aside from the revenue in order for you to say, hey, I'm going to make this leap, right? Because I think a lot of people can be like, the money's there, I can move forward.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of other things that need to be in place. What else do you suggest that aspiring entrepreneurs should be looking at in order to make sure that their venture is, like you said, unextinguishable, which I love. We'll get back to that in a moment.
Well, I was at BMO at the time, not at TELUS, because that'd be a conflict of interest, right? So that's another thing.
Point.
You got to make sure you can't be like a lawyer for a law firm and then doing lawyering at night, right? You got to be true to what a side hustle actually is. But I think to answer your question about when did I know, or when did it make sense to cut it off, and what was it needed to be in place?
Yes.
So one thing that needed to be in place is because in a full-time job, you get a lot of things that I call them fringe benefits. Like you get your benefits, like your dental and your health, and your spending account and all that stuff. And sometimes you get investment stuff. So you have all that foundational stuff. And in I guess operating a family or having a family, because I have 2 young kids. Well, not anymore. They're like in their 20s now, but then they were young.
Yeah.
And they needed things, right? So I couldn't, if I didn't have the support from my spouse to go and start that side hustle, and then start to see the side hustle flourish and be able to quit the full-time job without that benefit base and without support from family, then it wouldn't be possible. So I guess to answer that question, what ingredients was necessary in order to make that leap? It's having some sort of family support or having support in general to be able to do that. And, taking the risk of basically not having the benefits, not having support. And as a business owner, everything at the end of the day is your fault anyway.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to have a pretty thick skin to take on that additional responsibility. and that additional risk that involves with running your own business. Because, when you're working for a company, there's somebody else in charge that's running the show. They make a mistake, then they make a mistake. It's not on you. You're doing your job, right? You have a job, a task, a role. As an entrepreneur, that's not the case, right? And if you stop making money or money stops coming in, well, you're the one that has to fix that issue.
Yes.
So, the risks are obviously, as everyone knows, is so much higher, but then the rewards could also be quite high as well. Mm-hmm. So you're taking on more risk. There's hopefully more reward, but then the problem that gets stitched in there is that if you have no support or foundation, when things do get tough, and they will, you're not going to be able to weather the storm. And that's one thing that I'll say as well.
It's so important. And what I'm learning as I'm speaking with many different entrepreneurs and just jumping into entrepreneurship myself, mm-hmm. I'm learning that it takes a village.
Definitely.
Right? A lot of people want to go into entrepreneurship, maybe even because it's kind of branded as this sensational thing right now.
It's hot. It's now. It's crazy. Yeah, everybody wants to do it. Yeah.
But really, it's about having a strong community around you. Mm-hmm. What types of conversations did you have to have with your wife? Mm-hmm. With your co-founder? With other people within your network to make sure that you were supported, but mm-hmm. also to make sure that they were ready for this big change.
Mm-hmm. So at home, it was a pretty easygoing conversation to say, you know what, I have a passion for this thing. This thing is growing. I'm working on it more than I'm working on my full-time job, it seems these days, because it was just so heavily balanced where I had customers, I had concerns, I had outages, I had services, I had hardware to order, I had all this stuff. Whereas my other job was like, I got to service some people, go meet some individuals. I only worked 3 days because the other 2 days I was on site or we had a training event. So the other job wasn't really challenging me mentally. Mm-hmm, so I was like, okay, well, the draw is here. So having the conversation with the people in your circle to say, this is what I want to do is important. And I was lucky enough to get the support to say, you know what, this is your passion. This is what you enjoy doing. This you're not too crazy about, then go do that. Just go do that. And also from a support structure and having people in my corner, anybody I talked to, parents, friends, family, anybody was like, hey, that's a great idea. I can really see that your heart's in this and you're passionate about it. So pursue it. And that's all the support I needed.
It's so important. And whether you're the entrepreneur or you're the person who's supporting, just understanding that shared vision is so important. Like having that clarity about that shared vision 100%. And really what it takes to actually thrive, because there are going to be dips mm-hmm. and there's going to be highs.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to talk about some of the dips.
Yes.
What are some of the dips that you've experienced, and what advice would you give to someone who's in a similar situation?
Well, we're just coming out of one,
Okay.
So it's very timely. So we had a large customer that had a huge stake in our revenue. I'm going to say like 20-25% of our annual revenue was with one customer. And they ended up leaving the business. They found an alternative, and stuff happens. And we had some big contracts, some pretty big contracts that we were obligated to pay.
Okay.
And because we weren't receiving the revenue to pay those contracts, we started falling a little bit behind on those contracts. And there was moments where we're like, you know what, we're going to have to close the doors. Like, we can't afford to keep going because these contracts are killing us mm-hmm. Because we're paying out more money than we actually have coming in. Mm-hmm. So we were having a large, we're having a large deficit in the business, right?
Yes.
So 2024 wasn't a great year because of that. But what's happened is we kept at it. We started changing a little bit of the areas of business that we looked at. So as I said before, we focused mostly on the SIM card that goes in the hardware. Mm-hmm. We took a little bit of a larger vision and said, you know what, we're just not going to be that thing. We're going to try to be more things. We're going to do SIM cards, and we're going to be solution driven. So we were able to get involved in the sustainability side of things and be more involved in like waste collection and putting sensors and solution sets in the waste and environmental space. Mm-hmm. So we started doing more in that area. Like I said, like at the beginning of this year, and it's starting to pan out. We have a couple pilots going. We have a few customer sales that have been completed. So, and we have a massive deal we're working on, and we just started we just got the okay on last week, actually, to start with a POC with them.
Oh,
so the wheels are turning.
And can you describe for the audience what a POC is?
Proof of concept.
Okay.
Proof of concept. So
Beautiful.
we just started to do a trial. So they want to test us out before they move forward.
Yeah.
Or test out the solution. So, I can really say the reason why we were able to get to that point is just the perseverance and the constantly working at it. There'd be days where you come at the office, you'd be like, okay, where are we at? It's like, okay, credit card bills, there's a little bit of, frustration and like, oh, can we sell? Should we sell? Who can we sell to? Why? The amount of questioning you have of yourself in those moments is pretty tough. I actually just, I don't know if it was stress related, but I had a bout in the hospital where I was kind of out of commission for 3 or 4 days. And, it's like that old, I don't know if it's an old proverb, but it's like when you're, healthy, you got 1,000 problems. But when you're sick, you only have one. Right. So, that it kind of gave me a little bit of a wake up call. Say, you know what, like this focus, things are moving. Let's keep them going.
Yes.
So, to get back to what you're saying about, dips that we've had, that was a big one. We're just kind of emerging out of it. But it kind of shows that if you quit and you don't give it your best effort, obviously you're going to have to start over again, either with a new business or, God forbid, go get a job. There's nothing wrong with jobs. But it's just a different vibe if you don't want to put in the time to ascend beyond where you're at. And that's what we did. And we kind of doubled down and, knock on wood, things were getting better.
Congratulations on that, because that's not easy. And there's just so many different layers of what you just spoke about. Maybe we can talk about you being in the hospital in that moment, because you're so right. A million problems when you're laying in that hospital bed, one problem. And then, you're going through that dip and exploring what it means, whether you are going to sell your business. Yeah. If you could go back
walk away from it.
Or walk away from it.
Yeah, here's the
right?
keys. See ya.
Bye. Yeah. If you could go back to, Paul in that moment, what would you say to him?
I guess when it comes to, pulling ourselves out and, being in the hospital and all those things that were going on almost around the same time. It was not a big spiritual person, but it's one of those moments where you just kind of reflect and say, well, it seems like there's some higher power at play here. There's a wake up call, right? There's something that you need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Getting healthier, eating better, exercising more, because I have a history of being an athlete. That was kind of my backstory, right? Like, like I said before, basketball, track and field, a big golfer now, love golf.
Beautiful.
That's a whole other, people call that athletics, but I still do. So, it's not being able to do those things was hard.
Yeah.
Right. Not being able to, play basketball with your friends, or not being able to golf or swing a club because you got like a back injury, or, you have like a sore knee or something like that. I have bad knees, but that's a whole other story. You have those moments where it just makes you think, be thankful for what you have. Be thankful where you're at. Yes. And then try to move forward from where you're at. Don't dwell at where you're at. Just try to move forward. So, yeah, I find that when you have those moments, that's where you kind of get that inspiration to say, you know what, you just got to keep pushing, keep moving, right? Keep it moving. Keep it moving.
Yeah. And there's a certain level of mental toughness that you have to have in that moment.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And then, so what about your team? What were the conversations with your team like at that moment where there's a lot of that uncertainty? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are in the depth of that dip right now?
Yep.
And they're wondering, hey, there is that uncertainty. All of these options need to be considered. How should they be communicating with their team? And what's kind of the inner mind game that needs to be happening?
Well, you got to show a leadership, obviously, as the founder and the owner of the business, to know that you're pushing, that you're trying. It's always easy to just to say, you know what, throw your hands up and say, you know what, okay, we're done. You know, it's been a good ride, guys. You know, we're out of here. But to keep pushing and keep being that annoying voice that says, okay, this is gonna happen, guys. We're close. You know, one more deal, one more push. If we get this done, let's try this, let's try that. Because trying different things to try to get to that level of success was, I think, the way that we survived, or the way that we're surviving. Not saying, you know what, this is the way we've always done it, so we're going to do it that way. Let's try something different. Important.
Yeah.
Yeah, like changing it up, right? Excuse me. So we really tried to put effort into speaking with the folks that were on the team to say, you know what, something's going to work. Something's got to give. We're going to keep pushing. You know, we're a small team, so it's not like there's a lot of layers of communication. They see me working. They see that I'm, you know, in the office till 7.
So yeah, you've been able to weather that dip. And like you said, you're coming out of that moment. Yes. Testing is a big piece of that in terms of what you just shared. And testing is also an important element within tech. What's your, right? So what's your philosophy around that? Right? And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs in terms of their relationship with failure? Because testing comes with not just testing a bunch of things and they work, but testing a bunch of things and many times it fails.
Yeah. If you see my office and you see all the little pieces of hardware and technology that are sitting around, you'll know that I'm a big fan of trying things out. You know, not really afraid to spend money to try something to see where it goes.
Yep.
And it has to be part of your philosophy around things, because if you're not trying to, and especially when you're in a situation where you're having financial difficulty, you have to try new things. You can't just sit there and hope that what you've always been doing is going to give you better or similar results. So you have to try new things to try to, I guess, open up the opportunity set for you so you can try and move into new areas. So, you know, as a entrepreneur, you have to have a good relationship with failure. Failure more so not around the business in general, but about the aspects within the business. New products, new services, new offerings, new hardware, new designs, new logos, everything within the business, you have to be very willing to move on from if it's not working.
Yes.
People too. That's another thing too. If you, if there's a person in the organization that's not working, you have to be comfortable to move on from them and move on from maybe their methods of doing things. So it's not just testing of products and services. You have to have a good relationship with failure to be able to test. And again, I don't love using this word, but it's very applicable here. Pivot and go in a different direction when needed.
Absolutely. Because if you didn't, you'd be still in that dip, you know, and now you're emerging. We talked about the lows. I also want to talk about the highs.
Yes.
You know, going from, like you'd mentioned earlier, having that 5 to 9 and making just an incremental, you know, recurring revenue to being a multi-million-dollar firm is a huge transformation.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And so, you've talked about the low. And how do you deal with the highs?
I think the first notable moment of when excitement came into play is when we got that first customer to give us a check.
Okay.
You know, that every founder remembers that moment where what they started out to do is actually earning income. I think our first customer, maybe like $50, $60, something like that.
Oh, wow.
On a monthly basis. So that's great. You know, you extrapolate it over a year, we're almost close to Porsche money, right? Not close, but you know, that was our dream at the time. And then, you know, you go up to the other side of the spectrum when you're getting $100,000, $150,000 checks from customers, where you're really seeing the fruits of your labor now kind of transitioning into wins, right? But I think to answer your question about the highs versus the lows, I think the highs are, I think, less muted than the lows. Being a sports guy, one of the things that I always kind of look back to is that losing. What's the analogy? It's winning feels great, but losing feels worse, or something along those lines. Where I can't think of the analogy, but it basically what the analogy is that you rather losing is bad, but it's not as bad as winning or something to that effect.
I get what you're saying. So there's that whole concept of that fear of loss. Like if you've lost something, it feels worse than
the joy of winning.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes,
we got there.
Yes.
We got there. And again, I look at that as from a business perspective is that, like, the wins are great. You see them coming and it's, you win a client, you win a deal, you get a new opportunity, you're stoked, you're excited. But you have to always keep your eyes on the losses, the customers that are leaving, the relationships that are being fractured, the customers that are dissatisfied, right? Because you're running a business. So it's that whole adage that, you do a good job, people will tell 2 people. You do a bad job, they'll tell 11.
Ooh, that's so true.
Right? So you always want to make sure that you're there for your clients and that you're doing a good job because, as much as the wins are and the Google reviews and all the positivity are, it's the negativity that people sometimes look into. So you have to be cognizant of that even more so than you are of the, posting that you just got this large deal from this big, large client. So,
absolutely.
So I look at it.
And there's also a moment in that momentum where you start to realize, okay, this is growing, this is growing, this is growing.
It's happening.
Right?
Yeah. Okay.
And people often have this fear of success, right? We always talk about the fear of failure, but there's also this concept that's very rarely spoken about. But, in a lot of conversations with founders and previous to me being an entrepreneur myself, I worked at a multi-million-dollar tech firm working with a founder, a founder working directly with the founder. And what I realized was that, he's experienced all elements of the business, the failure, the growth, right? And when that momentum comes, the vision is being realized. There's a moment where you have to let go a little bit, right? You have to let the bowling ball kind of go into the abyss.
Oh, the abyss.
Not the gutter.
And then emerge right there for you to throw next. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about that moment of momentum and your relationship with really blooming into your success. Because, there's one thing to be afraid of failure. It's another thing to say, oh my gosh, it's happening. And often sabotage can happen.
Yeah, no, wow. Yeah, no, exactly. It's that more money, more problems thing, right? Like the more growth you have, the more potential risk you have for, other issues that may come along your way. We've stayed small on purpose for that reason, is that we try to stay as nimble as possible. So if we have to make a change or we have to adjust, we're able to redirect the team to be able to go after that new project. Case in point, there's Starlink is a big player in the mobile data space, right? But they're more on the consumer side, but they provide a large amount of data for a small amount of money. So we used to do that.
Okay.
So instead of doing that, occupying their space because they're a lot more cost effective, we had to pivot and look at more lower cost data solutions with a more strategic moat around them, so it's not as easy to replace or to get rid of it. So, when you're looking at your business as a whole, you definitely want to celebrate the wins and be positive about that. But you don't want to get yourself caught up in a situation where you are ignoring what else is going on around you and not being able to move the business to adjust to it.
Yes.
So yeah, like definitely the highs are great. And you just can't let yourself be overwhelmed by those levels of success. You just have to kind of keep yourself well grounded and understand kind of how the business ebb and flows and be able to adjust to it.
How do you keep yourself grounded?
That's a good question. It's almost a work-life balance question, which I call work-life integration, not balance.
Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, now that we're mobile, everyone's got a mobile phone, everyone's connected all the time, whether it's social media or LinkedIn or what have you. Well, I guess social media is LinkedIn, or like social groups and stuff like that. What I try to do to keep myself grounded is more just the other activities that I try to do, spending time with friends, spending time with family, being involved in like sports specifically. I still like the competitive aspect of, playing competitive basketball or playing golf when I can against individuals, or I haven't played a tournament in a while. But so keeping personal endeavors active and alive is something that I use to kind of keep the work-life integration going. Will I take a phone call on a golf course? Yes. I know it's taboo, but yes, I will. Will I stop playing basketball to deal with a customer issue? Yes. And the intention is to play the sport. It's not to work and then play the sport, but stuff happens. And if you're running an organization or you're part of a more active, club or group, you have to be flexible, right? You have to be responsive. So, my phone's always with me. I try to stay connected. I try to stay responsive. Because responsiveness it's the game at the end of the day, right? Like if a customer sends out 3 requests to 3 different vendors and you're the first one to come back with a response every time, well, you're always going to be preferred in that space.
Absolutely.
So responsiveness is very much the game, in my opinion. Other people may have different opinions, but being responsive is the game. And I find just dealing with businesses on a personal level, if somebody's not responsive, I'm out.
Yep.
Right? Because it just like it's not that I want people to respond to my email the minute after I send it.
Yeah.
It's just, give me something.
Yes, yes.
And because I know how I am and how I kind of deal with people. And if people aren't the same way, it kind of doesn't turn me off, but it kind of slows my desire to do business with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so you're integrating kind of your everyday business function into your life and really allowing them to flow in a seamless way.
You got it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, because there's we're all connected now, right? We're all, part of an ecosystem, if you will, of technology and business and personal and all these other things. So it's very difficult to remove yourself from that. But I do enjoy a nature walk here and there. I live in an area where there's a lot of nature around us by the escarpment way out in Milton. So there's a lot of outdoor spaces and time you can take for yourself. I have a dog, keeps me busy. Beautiful. 2 of them, actually. So, you have to have other things in your life, not just work.
Yes,
yeah, it helps.
Absolutely. You spoke about something that I think is a really interesting concept, especially for businesses that want to make sure that they can, especially for businesses and tech firms who want to be able to weather all of the changes that are happening in AI. You called it the moat of
technology.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you create a moat around your technology by changing before your competitor can and creating a little bit of a differentiated service before they can copy it, basically.
Okay.
So, what we do with connectivity is sometimes you make the connectivity smarter or you make the connectivity dedicated. One thing that we're looking at a lot now, and we haven't talked about AI yet, but is looking at how to use AI to help not just with finishing sentences and doing emails, but looking at it to take all the information and the data that we're generating from all the sensors that we're selling, and presenting some sort of presentation layer for customers so they can use and visualize that data a lot more simpler.
Okay.
So it's something that we're toying around with, how to use AI.
So you're visualizing?
Chatbots. Yeah, like
the data?
More, not so much visualizing, but just using it as a method to present it easier for people.
Okay.
So you're interacting with this data set in plain language, not having to use, specific prompts or anything like that. So and we're not the only one. There's a lot of people that are creating that technology moat around their core business so that they are ready for AI as it becomes part of, everyday life.
And
kind of is now.
So how would you suggest that a business owner approaches that? What's the framework that they should be using when they're thinking about how to create that technology moat for their business?
Well, keep up with trends, right? AI is very much at the forefront right now. So learn how to integrate that and use that in your business. That'll definitely give you a little bit of a technology moat around what you do. But also just be connected, like know what's going on. Like don't think that you're living on an island and there's nothing else going on around you.
Yep.
Stay very much grounded in your industry and very much grounded in the business that you're in. I found that early on as a founder, and I'm still working to get better at it, is that I didn't really understand or pay attention to the competition because I was just so busy focused on what I was doing. And the competition really can help mold your approach to things. And sometimes the competition is not necessarily competition. They could be co-opetition, right? They could co-op with you and you could work with them to get to an end goal, right? So
I've never heard that term. I love that.
You've never heard co-opetition?
I haven't heard of co-opetition.
Yeah, so
define that. What is co-opetition? Because I think that this is beautiful. Many businesses, they are looking at similar businesses as a competitor. They need to beat them.
Yeah, well,
double click into that.
Well, scale, right? Sometimes you don't meet the scale. Like we have a partner that we work with who is larger than us.
Okay.
They're in the same business as us. They are much larger than we are. But what we can do, because there's enough margin available, is we can leverage their service to service our end customer, because otherwise we couldn't service that customer the way that they needed to be serviced.
Yes.
So we cooperated with them to say, you know what, you can do this thing better than we can. So, and we have the customer, and the customer is willing to pay us for the thing. So how about we work together? We buy it from you, we offer it to the customer, and then when the customer pays us, we pay you. Right.
That's
so
amazing.
it's a multi-layered approach, but because of connectivity, the business we're in, there's just so many players of various sizes, right? You have your large carriers like your TELUS, Bell, Rogers, AT&T, Verizon, and then you have your smaller guys who are kind of in the middle of all that. And we're one of the smaller guys in the middle of all that. So it made sense for us to partner with somebody who was a little bit larger than us so we could get to the customer's end requirements.
Beautiful. That's great advice. So definitely think about that. Do your research on the competition, but also when you're looking at them, don't think of them as competition necessarily. Explore opportunities for that co-opetition.
Yeah, it's that whole scarcity mentality that there's enough to go around.
Yep.
Right? So if you focus on that as your thesis, that there's enough to go around, then you can be better, more suited to go after these opportunities. And it's always like, think bigger. Right? Think bigger. How can you attain a bigger goal? How can you get a bigger customer? How can you occupy a bigger space? Sometimes you can't do it on your own. So you need help to do that. And I think we've become very comfortable with that fact that we're going to reach out and we're going to engage our partners, which sometimes are our competitors, to get to that next level.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so when we talk about partnerships and, you know, being in these spaces, I think it's interesting as founders, right? Having those, like how we build those relationships, how we navigate the ecosystem. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like being a Black man in the tech space and navigating those partnerships and those relationships? Does it play a role? And if so, how do you navigate, and what advice would you give to other Black founders out there who are looking to navigate this space that's known to be a traditionally heterosexual white male space?
Well, I've always found myself as a person who's likes to operate in spaces where people don't expect me.
Yeah.
Right. I said that to a friend of mine. And it's like, well, what drives you? And it's like, well, I find it enduring to be in a place where people don't expect to see me. Right. Like whether it's, you know, I grew up in, you know, Air Mills, which is a primarily white area. You know, me and my buddy were the only two Black guys on the street. Right. And you know, we just rolled with it. Right. And moving to Mississauga at the time when I first did with my family, my parents, it was predominantly, we were the only ethnic guys in the school. We went to a school like 40 minutes away. And then when they built the school by us, we were still kind of part of the emerging community of, you know, Black people in that area. So I've always had a comfort of being in places where people are like, oh, who's this guy? Like, what's he doing here? Right. And like, oh, not who let him in, but he, you know, and when I used to, part of my cold calling when I was in sales, I'd make these cold calls. So I'd be like, you know, hey, this is Jason calling from TELUS. How are you? You know, I'd be very uppity, if you will. Right.
Yes,
people like, and then when I show up in the meeting, they're like, oh,
surprised that it's you.
Yeah, they don't want to say it's like, you didn't sound Black on the phone. It's like, what does Black on the phone sound like? So, you know, and I always found that was an interesting aspect of kind of my journey, is that people didn't really know who I was on the phone until they met me in person. They're like, okay, well, voice in person doesn't match.
Yeah.
That was then. Now it's not so much a case because, you know, like people are very chameleon in their approach, so it doesn't really matter. But what I've always found is that I try to focus on just being myself. And if people aren't comfortable, they don't like it or whatever, I don't really care. It's kind of like you've become comfortable in your own skin after a while in business.
Yeah.
And it took a while. I'm not going to be honest, like as a sales rep at a big company at TELUS, you know, you pick up the phone and like, obviously no one can see you on the other end, right? Because, you know, so you have to, it never was a factor. You know, I was always comfortable in that space.
Yeah.
And now as a sort of a Black founder, to fast forward, you know, organizations like FACE and other organizations that celebrate and help Black founders get to that next level are great. When I started out, probably 2015-ish, that didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't that additional focus on Black entrepreneurship and helping Black folks kind of excel in that space. So seeing it now is great. And I think if I could give advice to anybody who, is starting off that's, in that Black space or it just in general, is look to the community.
Yeah.
Get involved, be vocal, be out there. I was saying in my pre-interview there, if I had an opportunity to speak to a 30-year-old me now, what would I say to him? I would say, get involved, be involved in clubs, be involved in the community. Mm-hmm. Take advantage of all this free money that's out there.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of it and you just have to know how to navigate and just be present in spaces where either, there's people like you or there's people not like you. Mm-hmm. The whole aspect of something that, again, I wish I would have learned before is that Ontario specifically has all these regional innovation centers, mm-hmm. and they're really designed to help entrepreneurs accelerate. They have free courses, they have, free materials, they have mentorship programs. We're involved in one right now where it's more on the green side. So it's like it's called the Idea Fund. And it's more focused on helping founders in the green innovation space elevate their business. So we got into that. We're part of the third cohort, and we got funding for that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing.
And the whole aspect is I didn't know that was possible without having conversation with people who are already doing it. So that's the thing I would encourage people to do is make sure you get out there, make sure you get involved, make sure you ask the questions, find a mentor if that's within your scope.
So important.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's very important just to kind of not live in your bubble. Mm-hmm. And I think for the first couple of years of our business, I lived in the bubble because I was doing this and accounting, finance, research, marketing, all this stuff. Yeah. But there's just so much resources out there. So, again, that's my advice to any entrepreneur. Take advantage of the resources. There's lots of them.
That's amazing. Before I get to the last question, I wanted to ask, what are 3 things that you think contributed to your success? And I want us to frame it in the lens of
3 things. Okay.
Yeah, 3 things that someone should be paying attention to. If it's a blind spot. Okay. Whether it's in their mindset, in the way they're approaching their finances. Mm-hmm. I want to really empower people who are in that moment right now and they're working that mm-hmm. full-time job. They've got their side hustle. What are 3 things that you would say contributed to your success that you wouldn't have known?
I think having a foundation like family, friends, community, having that in place or access to it. We don't all have, rich and powerful fathers or uncles or cousins or what have you. So having a subset of people in your corner to help when the times are bad or to help when, to keep you grounded, right? Mm-hmm. Having that. The second one is to, and again, this may be contrary to what people say, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. Okay. Have a little bit of something on the side in case things go sideways. I was lucky enough through just some smart investing and all that stuff to actually have like a investment property and some other investment properties and stuff like that kind of helped be there in case things didn't work out. Mm-hmm. So, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I think the last one is to just have the drive within yourself and be comfortable with yourself to say, what, I'm going to try something that maybe I don't know how to do or that I maybe want to learn more about. So I think just that would probably be the last one is just look inside yourself and make sure that you're ready and make sure that you want to try something that's going to be a little uncomfortable. We could get into the whole being comfortable being uncomfortable kind of conversation. But I think that's a given at this point when it comes to entrepreneurship because, the whole word entrepreneurship is really implying you're doing something you've never done before and you're starting something fresh from the ground up. So I think it's implied mm-hmm. that you're uncomfortable and you're trying to get into a comfort space. So I think that's 3. Yeah, 3.
Beautiful. Is there anything else? This is my last question. What else would you like to share with the audience? Going on this journey that you've been mm-hmm. on, it's spectacular. From having that, like you said, $60 of recurring revenue.
Yeah, for $60. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To getting that Porsche. You got the Porsche, right?
Oh no, I got a Tesla instead. Don't say anything.
Oh, okay. That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
It was a decision point. It was electric Tesla, or do I get a 911? It's like, I'll get the Tesla. It's a little more economical. It's been good though. I got.
Are you ever going to get a Porsche? I feel like this Porsche thing needs to happen.
It needs to happen. But the Tesla, I got it before Elon kind of had his thing. So
okay.
I'm gonna put that out there as well. But it's a great car. I love it. It's like, anyways.
Beautiful. But to have, but going from that 60 to,
living some dreams.
Living some dreams,
yeah.
Right? What would you want the audience to know?
I think the thing that I look at, and again, you don't have to be super successful. You don't need to be a billionaire, an evil billionaire, or anything like that. You don't need to make millions of dollars a year or anything. As an entrepreneur, what I would encourage people to do is just be comfortable. Just be comfortable to say, you know what, I feel comfortable with what I'm doing financially. I'm making enough money to support my family and to take care of all the endeavors I want to do. But just be comfortable. Get to a point where you have enough money and you have enough security in your career, in your life, to be comfortable with how you're going to transition through the rest of your life. Entrepreneurship is not forever. You may decide at some point that, hey, you know what, I want to go back and I don't like the hustle. I'm just going to go back and do a 9-to-5, and that's cool. That's what you want to do. But if you're in the game and you're wanting to move forward with entrepreneurship, try to get yourself to a level of comfort where you can understand and have the things that you need taken care of. Whether it's family, loved ones, parents, a roof over your head, a car to drive, stuff along those lines. It's just, not everybody needs to make millions of dollars and be, on the cover of, Canadian Business Magazine or whatever. I don't know if you know what magazines are out there, but, be comfortable with your position as you start to gain things, as you start to move up the ladder, or just be comfortable for where you're at as an entrepreneur. Like I said, that would be my advice to people is like, it's not all about the Gucci watches
or the
Porsches, stuff like that. Tesla was a sensible car. It's electric. It works well. It wasn't anyways, but just try to get to that level of comfort where you feel comfortable with yourself and you feel comfortable in the things that you've achieved in your life and in your journey as a business owner or an entrepreneur. And that's really all I can say is just try to get to that level of comfort, because we're not all going to make billions of dollars and be at that, that pinnacle. We'll all just try to get comfortable.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Well, you've built, a beautiful legacy, a great business.
Yeah.
You're representing within the tech space as one of the, I think it's 3 or 4% of founders are Black founders, tech founders.
I don't meet many. I met a few along the way, and again, a lot of them are at my level, like where they're kind of they're not evil billionaires or anything like that. There are a few. I think there's a few out there, but they're making a living, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they're getting comfortable. They're making a living.
Yes. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you?
LinkedIn is where I live. That's where I spend my time, unfortunately. So Jason is traditional spelling rules are Rhule for the name there. So yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I guess I'm on the other stuff too, but LinkedIn is kind of where I spend most of my time. So that's where you'll find me commenting on stuff and participating in posts. I'll post a little bit more. It's been a little bit of a lull for me. I used to do every day. Yeah, we want to
hear from you.
I used to do every day, but it's tough. It's tough every day, but trying to keep up.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on the Other Canada podcast. I know your story and all of the frameworks and perspectives that you've given are going to help so many tech founders that are out there and aspiring tech founders to really thrive and build their business. So thank you so, so much. And we will see you in the next episode of the Other Canada podcast.